While sports fans are gearing up for the Sweet 16, we have a Sweet 16 times 2 here on today's show. That's right, it is our Top 247 rankings reveal. And for the first time in the 2024 class, it includes 32 five-star prospects. But this isn't just a five-star reveal. The entire Top 247 got a facelift, and we're highlighting the biggest risers and prospects who have played their way from nameless to names you need to know. The college football recruiting show starts right now. Alongside Blair Angulo, I'm Emily Proud. Please submit some questions in the chat. We will have some special guests for questions. Also, members of our rankings team will be active in the chat today, and the only way that you can be a part of all of it is by subscribing to the 247 Sports YouTube channel. Also, please like this video so we know that you are watching. You hit that like button. We're going to go hit the headlines. The top player in the 2024 class went on a few visits this weekend. Dylan Raiola taking a trip to Georgia and Georgia Tech. He just visited USC and will check out Nebraska next weekend. Blair, you've got that crystal ball in for USC, so how should Trojan fans feel about these visits?
Emily, they should still feel good about where USC stands with Dylan Raiola, but they should approach this recruitment with caution, buckle up those seatbelts. This is recruiting. After all, Raiola has liked every school he's been to. Georgia was a great visit. Nebraska was a great visit. Oregon's supposed to get a visit next month for the spring game. So, yeah, just brace yourselves for what could be really a whirlwind of a recruitment.
Well, speaking of the Dogs, Kirby Smart adding to his #1 class with a commitment over the weekend from 4-star athlete DeMello Jones. He picked Georgia over Miami, Ole Miss, Florida, South Carolina. I could go on, but I want to know, what are the Bulldogs getting in Jones?
A quick twitch athlete who has played all over the field at the high school level. DeMello Jones has highlights at quarterback. He has highlights at receiver and at corner and at safety. Is a raw high schooler who can take over the game in a number of ways. And I would say that Georgia has done a really good job, or a decent job, of putting the guys in positions to succeed. DeMello Jones should make his share of plays in Athens.
Well, Coach Prime has landed his first quarterback for the 2024 class. Indianapolis Cathedral's Danny O'Neal committing to Colorado this afternoon. He chose the Buffs over the likes of Illinois, Kentucky, Louisville, Purdue. Blair, what can Buffs fans expect from their new QB?
Consistency and composure. Danny O'Neal is a smooth operator. He anticipates well. He has a really nice touch on his second and third level throws. We really liked what we saw from him back in January at the All-American Bowl National Combine inside the Alamo Dome. And maybe for Colorado fans, here's the most important stat. Danny O'Neal is 24-3 as a starter the last 2 seasons.
He just wins. Look at the snow falling there, too. He can play in the cold. Well, it is continuing to trend toward Michigan, speaking of cold, for the #2 quarterback in the class. That's Jaden Davis. More crystal balls were put in for the Wolverines to land him after his 5th trip to Ann Arbor over the weekend. How much is this now considered, a matter of when, not if, Davis becomes a Wolverine?
Emily, it's certainly been trending that way for a while. The Wolverines obviously love Jaden Davis, and they've been pumping the brakes on a lot of other quarterbacks that might be expressing interest in making Ann Arbor their home. That strategy seemingly looks like it's paying off. It does appear that Michigan is in a terrific spot for the talented quarterback, and that would really help how this class might shape up.
More on Raiola and Davis when Steve Wiltfong joins us later in the show. He's actually in the chat right now, so drop some questions for him. But for now, we have something very important to do, so let's welcome on our Director of Scouting, Andrew Ivins. Andrew, big day for the rankings team as you are introducing a Top 247 rankings update. We love these days. It is the first major update to the Top 247 since mid-November, and of course, the big topic concerns the 5-stars who have now expanded from 12 to 32. So first, lay it out for us. What is the process like of whittling down thousands of prospects into an elite group of 32?
Well, it's not easy, right? We're pulling from a national pool around the country. You talk to certain people in different regions of the country and they think this kid should be ranked there. But when you take a step back and look at everyone from border to border, coast to coast, it's a wide ranging pool. And what's different about this top 247 is for the first time ever, 11 months before our rankings go final in February around that national signing day, we got a full 32 player 5-star field, right? This is something that's going to live. It's going to breathe all through the entire recruiting cycle. We're going to have updates, in the summer months, obviously after the senior season. So there's going to be a lot of movement, right? And when we sat down and picked out this 32, it was a difficult process. Usually we have a ton of data points. We're working off live evaluations, and we feel like we really know those prospects. Doing it right now in March was a little bit different. I'm going to be honest, when we got together and met, we only really felt good about 5 or 6 5-stars, but we had to get to 32. So what we did is we dug into the data, right? We looked for guys with long-term upside, guys with verified athletic markers, guys that have tested well. Statistics was important. And ultimately, that junior season film, that was a big driver for this. So we watched a ton of guys. I personally was burning the midnight oil in recent weeks trying to get this together. But this is it. This is the 32 5-stars, and we got a full top 247. 43 new names went in right now to this top 247. I think that might be a record for the most in an update.
That is very exciting. We got a lot of people watching right now, and if you want to give Andrew a little thumbs up, there is a button to do that. A lot of work has gone into this, and you said it. This is the first iteration of it, so this will change. You'll learn a lot more about these prospects over the next year or so until they actually end up signing their NLIs. And so let's go ahead and just tell you who they are. And let's start with prospects 32 to 27. We've told you about the depth of the defensive linemen multiple times on this show. You got 3 there in this range: Ernest Willer, Kamarion Franklin, and Dominic McKinley. But Blair, how about number 32?
Yeah, Xavier Filsaime, obviously a player that rose from a top 100 prospect just outside the top 90, and now he's a 5-star. Andrew, you've obviously been able to really see him and study him up close and on film. What about him do you like so much?
Blair, I think he has the best safety tape in America. Xavier is a kid who's originally from Florida, right? He's got a Haitian background. That's why you see that last name. I believe it's Filsaime. This is a guy with 10.5 speed. He's only been playing defense for a little bit, was previously a wide receiver. You turn on the tape, and that burst shows up. I think he's excellent at flowing downhill, making tackles in space, and I think he's a guy with a high ceiling, someone that's still figuring out the position. He just spent the weekend at Georgia. Will Muschamp and the Bulldogs have already sunk their teeth into him. So have a number of other blue bloods around the country. But Xavier, to me, I really like his ability to play from hash to hash and his ability to come up towards that line of scrimmage. So I think he could be a chess piece on Saturdays. Love the athletic markers, love the production, over 90 tackles as a junior. I think he's just now starting to figure things out on defense. So we're excited to see him as a senior. We went out on a limb here, making him a 5-star, but we wanted to get another defensive back in at the back end of the top 32, and Xavier was my favorite on tape. So definitely a name to know moving forward for recruiting fans.
All right, moving to the players ranked 26 to 21, we see our first 2 wide receivers and our only 5-star tight end in Landon Thomas. But let's go ahead and keep it moving here, though, with players 20 to 11. We're bringing it to you fast and furious here. 3 edge prospects in this grouping. You got 2 Alabama commits, and Jaden Lagway and Perry Thompson, but there's also one of our biggest risers. We love the guys that shoot up the board. So, Blair, that is edge Dylan Stewart. What do you think about him?
Yeah, terrific prospect. And obviously this is the position that I think right now is the hottest position in college football. Everyone needs an edge rusher that can get after the quarterback. He's a big riser. He was outside the top 120. Now he's in 5-star territory, number 13th overall. And Andrew, what has led to such a meteoric rise for this edge prospect out of Washington, D.C.?
Oh, Blair, Emily, you guys are seeing it right there on tape. It's his ability to get home and close, right? When you're scouting these pass rushers, guys that attack the corner, you want to see individuals that can convert the opportunities. Dylan Stewart, someone with 16 sacks as a junior there in the DMV. Last year, everyone was after Nicholas Harbor, the #1 freak. That was why they made it to the DMV. Now it's going to be Dylan Stewart. And what I also like about him is the frame. Yeah, he's over 6'3", 228 pounds, but that short area quickness. He's got a really good three cone time, a really good short shuttle time, and I think there's some position versatility. We haven't seen it much on tape, him dropping back to the second level in coverage, but I think he's a guy that can rush from the outside. I think you can maybe even play him inside as a Mike linebacker and let him tee off through those A and B gaps. So Dylan Stewart, we like what we know about him so far. Eager to see him in these camp circuits, but definitely someone with the arrow pointing up, and that's why he rose in the rankings for us.
All right, let's continue rolling through some of these rankings. And you might be wondering, how about 10-1? These top guys are top 10. Here they are, the top 10 players in the class of 2024. We'll talk through some of these guys. And again, please hit us with your questions in the chat if you have questions on specific players. But I got to ask about #1. Come on. Raiola remains at the top of the class. Andrew, why?
I'm going to be honest, Emily. I mean, there were some conversations back and forth about moving Raiola off the pole position. There was times during his junior season where he struggled a little bit. I think there was a playoff game where he threw for less than 100 yards, but that's the nature of a beast as a quarterback. Not everyone's going to be lights out every time they step on the field. And ultimately for us, what we liked about Dylan Raiola, #1 is that frame. He's one of the biggest, tallest, and heaviest quarterbacks here in the top 247. He's also got one of the best interception rates per pass attempt. He's only throwing a pick every 62.3 times he drops back for a pass. I think that is second or third in the top 247 for quarterbacks. And then it's that live arm. Everyone wants to compare it a little bit to Patrick Mahomes, but his ability to whip it and layer it to all three levels of the field, and sometimes off plane, it's super unique, super rare for a kid his age. So those are the three big things for us. It's going to be interesting to see really how this whole quarterback picture plays out here over the next few months. We got the Elite 11 finals, obviously, in the summer, and then the senior season. So Raiola stays #1 right now. I do think there's a chance someone will eventually maybe bump him in the rankings. Who is that person? I don't know. We talked about Jeremiah Smith, the wide receiver from South Florida. He's headed to Ohio State. He has been excellent on the camp circuit. And then Williams Nawarni, the defensive lineman out of Kansas City. He's got one of the longest reaches. I personally think he took a major step forward from a technical standpoint between his sophomore and junior season. So we'll see who comes out there. Raiola #1 for now. Again, for those reasons, that frame, that arm, the lack of turnovers, a lot to like about him. But I don't think it's a done deal that he's going to go wire to wire for us with that #1 ranking.
Positional value, a big thing there, why Dylan Raiola is #1. And it is a down year at quarterback. It's not as deep with quality arms as the 2023 class was, obviously with Arch Manning leading the charge there. One other position that's really down this year, Andrew, is running back. There are 0 running backs in the top 32. Were there any guys, any players that maybe were under consideration or guys that are on that watch list to eventually get 5-star status?
Yeah, Jarrett Gibson at Bradenton IMG Academy. We've talked about him a lot on this show. He's a guy that has tested off the charts. He didn't get a ton of run as a junior at IMG. They would get up big in games and they would kind of put him on the bench. We like him. He was in the conversation for that top 32. So was Taylor Tatum, another ball carrier out of the Lone Star State. He's a guy that can move it in between the tackles. So you love to see that big, powerful back with some good speed markers. But Blair, you mentioned positional value with Dylan Raiola. What about positional value with running backs right now and just what we're seeing at the next level? Look at the 2023 NFL draft. Kind of the rumors making the rounds is that Bijan Robinson out of Texas. Some organizations have him as a top 5 talent if they were going to make a big board. But a lot of mock drafts, a lot of people expected him to go later in the first round. So right now the running back position kind of feels like a bit of a plug and play, right? You can get a guy in there that can be hot and you can use a committee committee type of approach. So we elected to hold off right now when it comes to the running backs. Obviously, we're going to revisit that position after the spring months. We'll revisit again after the senior seasons, and we'll see. But right now, no running backs in the top 32.
You kind of mentioned it, but just a reminder that we don't just pick 32 because it's a random number and it seems like a solid group. It is mimicking what you all predict will happen in the first round of the NFL draft. And so we're not seeing a lot of running backs go in the first round of the draft, so not a lot of 5-star running backs. Okay, so this update covers not just the 5 stars, but the entire top 247. That's a lot of players. So in this rankings update, Andrew, who are some prospects that stand out as players who maybe went from being relatively unknown to playing their way onto the national radar?
Aaron Scott, let's start with him. He's a big cornerback out of Ohio. This was a guy that was number 223 in the rankings, and he's up into the 30s. We love what he's able to do on the outside. He's natural in man coverage, as simple as that sounds. Sometimes, these corners can't play man, and we think he can play man, off man, maybe even get him in the boundary. You see how physical he is. He had 5 interceptions as a junior, and when you go back and look at how he tested as an underclassman, it was very well for someone his age. So we like Aaron Scott. We wanted to get more corners up the big board for us, and he's a guy that rose in the rankings. A lot of schools after him, Ohio State, Michigan, they're all fighting for Aaron Scott. So we are big fans of him.
Andrew, there are always outliers with our rankings, with other rankings. We're higher on some prospects that maybe some are not as high on. There are other people that are higher on some prospects that maybe we're lower on. Who were some outliers that maybe we're higher on than our competitors?
Well, I got to realize I was supposed to read off my other risers right now. So why don't I give you a few more risers in the rankings? Gatlin Bear, wide receiver out of Idaho. He's the guy that shoots up into the top 64 for us. Blair, I know you're really familiar with him. Brandon Huffman. This is a guy who just beat Roderick Pleasant in the 60-meter dash. Roderick Pleasant, we thought, was the fastest prospect in the 2023 cycle. Bear comes from a family of athletes. Both mom and dad ran track at Utah State. His brother runs at Mississippi State, has put in down some good times there. And he's playing football in Idaho, but he's doing everything you would expect him to do there. 73 catches for just over 1,000 yards and 18 touchdowns as a junior. Has already accepted an invitation to the All-American Bowl. Talking with Cooper Patagna, one of our other national recruiting analysts. We're fired up to get to see this guy in San Antonio at the end of the cycle. Someone that can beat you deep, really good run after catch capability. So Gatton Blair, a name that we've moved up in there. And then one more I just want to highlight, Christian Bentancur, a tight end out of Illinois. This is a kid that's committed to Clemson. I think it's a really deep year at the tight end position. And when you start watching the film, breaking it down, he's one of my favorite tight ends out there. I think he's a natural pass catcher, monster radius. He can go up and get the football. There's a few one-handed grabs on there from his junior season. Christian Blair, great catch radius. You can run after the catch, and then you can see him playing a little bit of defense. So we believe that suggests that he can block and be more of a traditional tight end. Now, Blair also talking about some of the outliers, guys that we have ranked higher than others. Cameron Fountain, it's an individual I want to talk about. He's out of the Atlanta area, not at one of the biggest traditional high schools when it comes to football powers in Booker T. Washington. But this is someone we saw at the Under Armour All-America game. He was an instant eye catcher with his frame, over 6'5", 230 pounds, 82-inch wingspan. And then when you Google his name on YouTube, you get some highlight reels of him throwing down dunks on the hardwood. And we talk about position versatility in the front seven, talking with different colleges that are recruiting him. Some think he's an edge player. Some think he might be a linebacker. Some think he might be able to shift inside and be a pass rushing 4-eye. So Cameron Fountain's a name. And then two more. Jaquan McCroy, a big offensive tackle out of Alabama. It's not a strong year for corner protectors, but Jaquan McCroy, we love him. We love his length. He's a guy that is able to extend the arc, make it more difficult for pass rushers to get around him. Talking to him at that Under Armour camp outside of Atlanta, He was someone that used to be almost pushing 400 pounds. He's gotten down to 365. We love how he moves for an individual that size. So Jaquan McCroy, a name to know when we talk about the offensive tackle pool and what's available there. And then the final one, Kai Bates. This is a kid out of the Orlando area. He was at Edgewater High School. Played a ton of wide receiver, but was thrust into action as a defensive back late in his junior season. Ended up picking off 4 passes, and you're going to see it here on tape. He's just got tentacles for arms. Cornerbacks try to challenge him. He's able to swat pretty much anything that comes his way out of the area. He's also impressed on the 7-on-7 circuit, so we think his football still, best football still ahead of him. We're looking for corners that are over 6 foot. Saw a ton of them at the NFL scouting combine, and guys that can find the football. Kai Bates can do just that.
I love it. You mentioned your friend Cooper Patagna. He is actually in the chat right now, so if you got any questions for him, feel free to drop them. And of course, we're looking for questions for Andrew. I got one more for you. Just looking at this class overall, what positions would you say have the most top-tier talent in depth? And then on the other end of things, which ones might be considered as having a down year?
Well, the strong positions are definitely wide receiver, right? We have 8 of them in our initial top 32, so 8 5-stars. And that's a bit eye-rising, right? That's a high number. Look at recent NFL draft trends over the past 3 years. 17 wide receivers have gone in the first round, but you've had a bunch more go in day 2. And we felt that, hey, this group of 8 receivers, we liked them a lot. Some new faces, some familiar faces in there, but we wanted to stack them up front. So I think wide receiver, it's very deep there. Cameron Coleman's a guy. We've talked about Perry Thompson, the Alabama commit. Obviously, Jeremiah Smith. You got Mylan Graham. A lot to like with wide receivers, and I think there's some depth to that position as well. There's not just high-end talent. There's also some other guys that can make an impact on Saturdays. Same thing with tight ends. I think we have 7 tight ends in our initial top 100. Landon Thomas, the Georgia commit, is the only guy with the 5-star status right now. But I think as we gather more data, get more exposure to some of these guys, it wouldn't be surprising maybe if there was 2 tight ends in that top 32. Now, by far the biggest weakness, I talked about it a little bit with Jaquan McCroy, is on the offensive line. We only have 1 offensive lineman in our initial top 32. That's Brandon Baker out of Mater Dei out there in California. We like what we see from him. But after that, only 3 more in the top 64. So it's a bit alarming. It seems like there's not as much high-end talent on the offensive line. I do think the silver lining, though, when we take a look at this is past 2 cycles, so 2022, 2023, this time in March, we didn't have as many big bodies, and we actually had 2 guys rise from outside the top 247 and finish in the top 32. So we're interested to see who those individuals will be this year, where they're going to come from, those offensive linemen, but still searching for the big bodies and the guys that can protect the blind side and keep quarterbacks' jerseys clean.
All right, we are no longer searching for questions because we've got a bunch here, so let's go ahead and knock some out. The first one comes from T02. What are the chances that Luke Kromenhoek ends a top 50 recruit? Andrew?
I think that's a good one. Luke Kromenhoek, I wrote it in the rankings release story. We're still trying to figure out this pool of quarterbacks. Dylan Raiola is out front. Right behind him's Jaden Davis. And then you got 3 more, CJ Carr, Julian Sayin, and Elijah Brown. I think that's kind of the pack that's chasing Raiola. But right behind that, I'd put Aaron Oland and then in Luke Kromenhoek. Kromenhoek, when you start breaking down the statistics of all these quarterbacks, he has started the least amount of games of the bunch. And then really, when you learn more about that, it's because he decided to sit behind Holden Gerner, who was an Elite 11 finalist 2 years ago and signed with Auburn. So he waited his turn. I had a chance to see him play down in Miami in his second career start. Came away super impressed. His team was overwhelmed a little bit from, at the point of attack. So he was running around, but I thought his ability to create, his ability to keep his eyes down the field was certainly promising. Just a guy we want to see a little bit more from, but someone that is a favorite on the rankings team. We're big fans of Luke Kromenhoek. We've been higher on him than everyone else so far through the process, and excited to see what he's going to be able to do here as a senior.
All right, I'm going to remind you quick here to please hit that like button if you have not already. We got a lot of people watching this show right now. We would love to hear from you. This isn't a question, but it's a great comment. Sue says, 8 wide receivers. Thank you very much. Ohio State will take 4 of them. We know that Ohio State loves them some 5-star receivers, but I want to ask about a guy, throwing passes to those receivers, and that is DJ Lagway. We've had a lot of questions in the chat right now, Andrew, asking why he wasn't in the as a 5-star prospect, and so I'll let you take the floor here and tell us about your thoughts on where you ranked DJ Lagway.
Oh, it's easy to get engulfed with DJ Lagway's traits, right? He is by far one of the best runners here in the 2024 cycle when it comes to quarterbacks. He's got that frame you're looking for, 6'3", over 225 pounds. He improved as a passer his junior season, but we still want to see him get a little more consistent. We'd also like to see him win some games on Friday nights. We kind of want winners. DJ Lagway, 10-10 as a starter over the past 2 years at the varsity level. He's someone that's right there for us. I should have mentioned him in that pack with Aaron Nolan and Luke Kromenhoek. All those guys are in the conversation. And from a trait standpoint, this is the guy in the 2024 cycle. So someone that we're going to continue to monitor. Hopefully he makes it into the Elite 11 finals. I think that'd be a great opportunity for him to show what he can do alongside some of these other quarterbacks, alongside an Elijah Brown, alongside a Julian Sayin and a CJ Carr. So we're tracking him, saw him a few weeks ago at the Under Armour camp in Dallas. A bit of an up and down performance for him. So just consistency and someone that's going to be in the conversation probably till the end, I think, for us when it comes to quarterbacks and a 5th star.
Yeah, that Elite 11 camp's got to be much easier for you guys in order to, evaluate those prospects, is seeing them next to each other and seeing them kind of compete alongside each other. We got a question here. It says, how close is the battle between Williams and Nwaneri and David Stone? Well, defensive line battle there. What do you think, Andrew?
This was an easy one for us. Williams out in front. He's got a bigger frame than David Stone. We like David Stone in what he brings to the table. Saw him at IMG Academy's Pro Day 2 weeks ago. He's explosive. He can get after the football. But the thing is he's not the widest of individuals. I think he's kind of a one-gap player, specific, he's kind of a one-trick pony. So Williams, on the other hand, over 6'6", monster reach. We think he's going to be able to eventually get up to 280, 290 pounds. So this was an easy one for us. I think really more of the conversation with David Stone is some of those pass rushers behind him. There's a big group of Aiden Breland, who's sitting there in the 20s for us out of Mater Dei Academy. Kind of a little bit different than David Stone. We like David Stone. I just kind of view him as a guy that has to play in the right scheme and the right system. So not much of a conversation between Williams and David Stone.
All right, Grant wants to know, why did Bryce West drop out of the top 150?
Well, I spent more time than anyone else watching cornerbacks. I study them all at length, right? And I think Bryce West is a fine prospect. I think he does a lot of things well, a lot of things good. I just don't know if he's elite at one single thing. For us, ultimately, I don't think this was us really trying to knock Bryce West. More so, it was some of these bigger, faster corners with more verified markers. That's kind of the reason why he slid back a little bit for us. Still big fans of Bryce West again, but with me in this seat, we're going to prioritize arm length at that cornerback position. We're looking for guys that are over 6 foot, and if you're going to play on the inside as one of those slot corners, then man, you got to be able to move laterally. Not saying Bryce West can't do that. This is more a product of us finding some other corners we liked a little bit more. That's why he slid down the board in the top 247 for us.
All right, my last question is, can you name the entire top 247 starting at 247 and up to 1 in the exact order?
I think I probably could get to 64. And then after.
Really?
Right.
Okay. No, that was not a real question. Andrew, you have done so much. I know a lot of effort has been put into this with you and the entire rankings team. So thank you so much for explaining all of your work to us.
Appreciate it. Sorry I was all over the place. I missed my cue on the, what was it, Outliers or something?
You're good. We talked through a lot of prospects, so I really appreciate you, Andrew. Thank you. Be sure to check him out with Cooper Patagna on the 24/7 Sports Football Recruiting Podcast. New episodes hit your feed every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. You can listen wherever you get your podcasts. We are not done on this show. As promised, it is time for some Wiltfong intel. So let's welcome in our Director of Recruiting, Steve Wilfong. Steve, we saw you very active in the chat. It's our turn now to ask you some questions. And we've talked about him many times on the show already, and we'll continue to do it in this cycle. But what do we need to know about Raiola's visit to Georgia and Georgia Tech?
Yeah, and Cooper Patagna's in chat right now doing a fantastic job answering questions about these rankings as well. So make sure you're jumping in there, hitting the like button, like you say, and everything. But look, Dylan Raiola, this was his 6th time on Georgia's campus. And I think the momentum is now with the Bulldogs again in this recruitment coming out of a trip where, talking to his father, he said that Georgia's elite in every way. And he talks to Mike Bobo every day. Loves the opportunity to play on the SEC stage there, the type of players that he could play with at Georgia. I think the way Kirby Smart has built his alma mater, those are all things that stand out to Dylan Raiola. And again, Georgia was the first program to identify him very early on in his process. They were the first to offer him. They got him to campus a ton. I think they grabbed the momentum after the national championship game as well with the way that they showed against TCU. I think 2 visits to USC clouded that a little bit, but I'm back thinking that Georgia has the momentum coming out of this visit to Athens with the time he spent with the Georgia coaching staff, watching their first full padded practice. I think he really loved the experience.
What a back and forth battle we've got on our hands, Steve. It's going to be a handful to cover that recruitment, obviously, in the coming weeks and months. Dylan Raiola wasn't the only prospect in Athens to take in Georgia's practice. They had a number of other high-profile players and recruits that they're targeting. Number 1 class right now, but who else did they make an impression on this past weekend?
Well, basically everyone on campus. We'll just highlight a few here. 5-star defensive lineman Williams Nwaneri made his first visit to the Georgia campus, and he told me he'll be back for an official visit. Coach Derive, Coach Smart really impressed him. The intensity of practice. He's been on a lot of visits. He's seen a lot of places. He said it's just different at Georgia, and you can tell why they win at a high clip. 5-star receiver Ryan Wingo, who was a big riser in these rankings, up to number 6 in these top 247 rankings. Gabe Brooks, super high on Ryan Wingo as a prospect, and so is the Georgia Bulldogs. This is a recruitment where I thought Tennessee was in fantastic shape for him for much of it, but recent visits to Alabama, we kind of talked about that on the show a couple weeks ago. I thought that Alabama visit moved the needle. I think this Georgia visit really moved the needle, and the Bulldogs is a program I'm watching closely. And just like Nwaneri, he said that he'll be back for an official visit as well. And one other player to highlight that was at Georgia this weekend is Top 247 linebacker Miles Graham, who's currently committed to Florida. But Georgia is a program that he said he's going to come back for an official visit. And similar to Nwaneri, just talked about the intensity of practice, how physical they were, how the coaches were getting after him, but also how the coaches were coaching them up on the side. And then seeing that applied on the field really stood out to Miles Graham. So Florida may have their hands full to keep him in the fold as well.
All right, Jaden Davis took yet another trip to Ann Arbor, and of course, more crystal balls came out of it. I think it's 6 now total for him to land at Michigan. What's the latest with Jaden Davis?
Yeah, Emily, you should put a crystal ball in too, because I love where Michigan stands for Jaden Davis right now. Is his 5th visit to campus. Got a chance to take in a spring practice, got a chance to take in a spring scrimmage. And then the main reason why he went up to visit was to spend time with new quarterbacks coach Kurt Campbell, get a feel for him in person. And Coach Campbell knocked that out of the park, talking to Jaden and talking to his dad. They have full trust in Kurt Campbell and what he's able to do in that position room. J.J. McCarthy's already stamped him with his approval, and the Davis family super close with the McCarthy family. And then look, Jaden loves Jim Harbaugh, and I think I get the sense, talking to the Davis camp, Jim Harbaugh obviously loves Jaden Davis too. As Blair said, they aren't pushing for any other quarterbacks in the class. He's QB2 for 247 Sports. He's QB1 on Michigan's board there, a 5-star recruit in our updated rankings here. And those two got a chance to reconnect, and Michigan's the clear program to beat here for Jaden Davis right now.
Yeah, Steve, I had another quarterback who had told me he had made it out to a visit to Michigan, and they basically told him, maybe you should look around. We're targeting this Jaden Davis guy. Other players were in Ann Arbor for visits, and obviously they're trending for Jaden Davis. Who else might they be trending for, Steve?
Well, Michigan, they have the number 5 class in the country right now. When you land 2 straight Joe Moore awards awarded to the best offensive line in college football, you're going to probably recruit that position at a high level moving forward. They already have Luke Hamilton committed out of Avon, Ohio. I logged the 24/7 Sports Crystal Ball for Blake Frazier, a legacy recruit out of Austin, Texas, Vandergrift tie. Michigan covets him, got him to campus again this weekend. I think that they've set the bar in this recruitment. He's going to be at Texas this weekend, was recently at Oregon. He's got his eye on others like LSU, Florida, but I think Michigan is the program to beat right now for Blake Frazier. And another offensive lineman that I really like Michigan for is Ben Roebuck out of Lakewood, Ohio, St. Edward High, 6'7", 320 pounds. I feel really, really good about Michigan's position there. And then let's talk about another player that's extremely high on Michigan's board, regardless of position. Top 247 running back Jordan Marshall out of Cincinnati, Archbishop Moeller. Rushed for nearly 2,000 yards as a junior. Also can catch the football out of the backfield. Just a dynamic, multi-purpose back there. Arguably the best player at the position in the Midwest. I think Michigan I give them the edge in this recruitment going into his spring visits and then ultimately his officials. And certainly he's high on Ohio State. Wisconsin's very much in it with Luke Fickell and his ties to Cincinnati and how hard that they've recruited that area. Jordan Marshall's high on Wisconsin. And then Tennessee's the SEC program that he's looking hard at. He's going to visit all these programs again, but Jordan Marshall is back at Michigan this weekend. And Michigan, they had some tough sledding against Ohio State for a while on the trail, particularly in the state of Ohio, but they've beaten the Buckeyes 2 times in a row. They've been in 2 straight college football playoffs. Their rushing attack is one of the most dominant ones in college football. And then you add in the stuff that Michigan offers off the field, his relationship with Mike Hart. I think the Wolverines are in excellent position for Jordan Marshall as he continues through his process. So we'll see what happens with his upcoming visits to Ohio State, Tennessee, and Wisconsin. And we know he'll be back at Michigan.
Well, newly minted 5-star edge Jordan Ross visiting Auburn over the weekend outside of just missing Cam Newton. How'd that visit go?
Well, I think that Auburn's in fantastic position for Jordan Ross. I think that's one of the programs that he's looking the strongest at right now. He had a great visit to Alabama early in the month. This is a guy that Cooper Patagna really fell in love with after seeing him live in Atlanta here. And he's got some visits coming up. He's going to be at Georgia this weekend. He likes I think we could fill in the blanks on what he likes about Georgia. 2-time national champs, their track record of defensive linemen getting drafted. He's going to go to LSU on April 1. He's not been to LSU before, so he's excited to learn more about the Tigers program. LSU is our number 2 class right now. Auburn, he'll be back on April 8th. And then Tennessee, he's been to Tennessee several times. April 15th, he'll be back there. And so I think right now, Alabama was a really strong visit for him. He's excited about the future of Auburn under Hugh Freeze and company. But don't sleep on Tennessee here. He's been there numerous times. I think the Vols are in very good position for him, and he'll be back again on April 15th for their spring game.
Steve, let's stay in the state of Alabama. Cameron Coleman, newly minted 5-star, was just the alpha dog, according to 24/7 Sports, at the OT7 regional in Phoenix this past weekend. What's the latest in the recruitment of the coveted pass catcher?
Yeah, and that's a guy that I believe blew Ivins and Cooper Patagna away when they saw him live eval, and then he backed that up in front of Huffman and Chris Singletary and those guys that covered the event over the weekend. But Mike's got some visits coming up here. He's got a return visit to Tennessee locked in, and he saw Tennessee beat Alabama, and he was back there in January and then coming there again this spring. It shows me that he is obviously very high on the balls. He's also excited to get back to Alabama. Had a great experience in Tuscaloosa this summer. He's going to visit Alabama the first week of April, as well as Tennessee the first week of April. And he enjoyed talking with Nick Saban on his last visit. He's got an official visit locked in for USC in June. He also visited USC in the summer. And that's a program I get the sense they're kind of in a sneaky good position for Mike Matthews as well. He loved his first experience out there, going to go back for an official. And then Georgia, Clemson, he'll get to those campuses again. And those are kind of the 5 programs that I think are in best position for Mike Matthews right now. And again, Tennessee getting the second visit since in this calendar year shows how highly interested he is in the Vols.
Yeah, you mentioned Mike Matthews. Clearly he's got a busy spring ahead already, all over the place with his visits. So what's on the horizon for his recruitment?
Yeah, so Mike Matthews looking to get to Georgia soon, going to get to Tennessee and Alabama the first week of April, and then USC and official in June is what's locked in right now, and then we know he'll get to Clemson again soon.
All right, Steve, we're going to ask you some viewer questions here. We've got a lot. I hope you guys are watching, by the way, because the chat is just going nuts right now. I think Andrew Ivins hopped back in it. Our colleague Josh Pate's in there. So let us know you're watching the video by hitting the like button. We are about 20 likes away for 100. But let's go ahead and ask some viewer questions. This one comes from Timmy. Who is the biggest threat to steal Cam Davis from FSU? He adds, go Noles. What do you think, Steve?
I mean, I think he's pretty strong in his commitment to Florida State right now. But if you're asking me to speculate, maybe the Vols, maybe Tennessee. But I know he's super excited about Florida State right now. And what Mike Norvell and that staff's building, he was just down there for Legacy Weekend, had a fantastic experience. I think that continued to solidify his commitment to Florida State. He's a really talented running back. Obviously plays some quarterback on the high school level, but just dangerous with the football in his hands, and a major early pickup for Florida State in that program that's obviously on the rise right now.
All right, so sounds good. So, Timmy, you can be happy about your Noles. This next question comes from BRC Gamecock. I wonder what the question is going to be about. Is South Carolina in the race for Kamarion Franklin? Because he visited recently.
Yeah, me and him chatted about this in the chat, but
nice.
we got a lot of South Carolina viewers watching here that want to know that answer as well. Kamarion Franklin was at South Carolina this past weekend, and I think he had a really good time. And he said that he's looking forward to getting back there again on his next visit. I know that Auburn has really moved the needle for him with their ties in the state of Mississippi. Hugh Freeze, Coach Garrett, their defensive line coach, he just had a really good visit to Auburn. He's going to be taking his second visit of the calendar year to Miami this weekend, so certainly their program to watch. He's actually on Louisville's campus right now. But Florida State's they want to play him on the edge, the defensive end. He's got a really good relationship with Coach JP, Coach Kapuchis, and Coach Odell. And so those are some of the contenders in there for him. Ole Miss, of course, is doing everything they can to keep him in state. But I think South Carolina closer to the top right now among that group.
All right, shout out to our colleague Hale McGranahan saying that he liked the video. Everyone, be like Hale and like the video. We got one more question for you here. Steve, can these updated rankings completely change a team's recruiting strategy? That's an interesting.
I think that, it should. I mean, Ivins and Cooper and those guys do a great job. But no, these college programs, they have their own board, and they know what they're looking for their specific offense and their specific defense and their specific culture and their specific needs. And so 24/7 Sports, our rankings, we don't have a roster we're putting together. We don't have an offense. If we did, and Carl Reed was our offensive coordinator, we were running that wing T, but we don't have an offense. We don't have a defense. So we're just trying to order the guys in the way that we see them getting their names selected in the NFL draft, while these college programs have their boards together in a fashion to try and win games during the fall on Saturdays.
I love it. Steve, thank you so much for all of the great insight and intel. We appreciate it. Have a good one. Well, be sure to check out the Wiltfong Whip Around. New videos dropping every Monday and Friday on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Before we go, I have a couple things that I need to say. First off, shout out to one of our producers, Lance Glynn. It is his birthday today, so a big happy birthday to him. I will not sing for you guys because we will lose all of our viewership there, but just want to wish him a big happy birthday. And then also just thank you so much to our entire rankings team. We love these ranking updates. We say it all the time. It's really exciting to see where all of these players move around. But what you see in this 45-minute show has been a lot of hard work going into it. So a big shout out to Andrew Ivins, Chris Singletary, Cooper Patagna, and Gabe Brooks. I know you guys have put in a lot of work throughout the last couple of months, and that work does not stop. because these guys are getting ready to play in their senior season. So thank you so much, and thank you for tuning in. For Blair Angulo, I'm Emily Proud, and this is the College Football Recruiting Show.